Pain is the doorway. It is not weakness leaving the body. It is instruction entering the mind. When pain strikes, whether through failure, fatigue, or pressure, it triggers the brain's most powerful capacity, neuroplasticity, that sacred process by which the brain rewires itself, reforms itself, reshapes who you are at a cellular level. But it does not happen in silence. It does not happen in comfort. It only ignites when the nervous system is placed under stress and you choose to stay awake in the fire. You are made to grow through that moment, and when pain hits, the nervous system lights up like a battlefield, threat detection, fear circuits, stress hormones, all flooding the system. And right there, in that space of biological chaos, lies a narrow path. If you walk it with courage and control, the brain opens. The circuits that define your limits begin to dissolve, new connections form, the synapses of strength, perseverance, and focus begin to wire together, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. When the body aches and the breath shortens, when the temptation to quit becomes louder than your heartbeat, that is when the machinery of change begins. The limbic system wants you to retreat. It was built to keep you safe, but you were not built just for safety. You were built for transformation. And pain is the invitation. The moment you stay locked in, not emotionally detached, but biologically engaged, you signal to the brain that this challenge is valuable. And value determines adaptation. If your brain believes this moment matters, it reorganizes itself to survive it better next time. And that reorganization becomes who you are. You cannot learn grit from comfort. You cannot rewire confidence from applause. You cannot program discipline through dopamine alone. The deep, lasting neural change, the kind that alters identity and destiny, comes through pain met with purpose. When the muscles tremble, the voice of doubt screams, and yet you continue. Your brain encodes that act. It remembers. It strengthens the connection between endurance and reward. It prepares you to face more, hold more, become more. This is why the strongest minds were not forged in peace, but in storms. It is not the avoidance of pain that produces power, it is the reverence for what pain awakens. There are biochemical signals in every struggle. Cortisol rises, yes, but so does epinephrine. Neurotrophic factors are released that tell the brain, grow here. Adapt here, rebuild here. You don't have to love the pain, but you must honor it, not emotionally, biologically. With breath, with effort, with forward motion. When you meet pain as a signal, not a sentence, you unlock the divine function of your nervous system to transform what was once unbearable into something unbreakable. Adversity does not just test you, it changes you. When you face a challenge, when your body is under strain, your breath tightens, your heart races, your muscles burn, your brain is not just recording the experience, it's releasing a chemical storm designed to evolve you. The moment pain hits, the hypothalamus signals the adrenal glands to release cortisol and adrenaline. These are not enemies, they are ancient allies. They heighten your awareness, sharpen your perception, and shift your brain into a state of readiness. This is the biology of survival, but if you train it, it becomes the biology of victory. Under pressure, the mind narrows its focus. Distractions fade, the noise dies down. In that moment, you have a choice, flee or channel. Most people let the stress run wild, they panic, retreat, collapse into emotion. But the ones who win are those who learn to ride the wave of their own chemistry. They don't suppress the stress response, they direct it. They convert cortisol into clarity. They use adrenaline to activate action. They don't fight the biology. They partner with it. That is the secret. The neurochemical storm is not the threat. Misuse of it is. Inside the struggle, when your nervous system is lit up, you're in the perfect state to ingrain new behavior. Neurons fire with greater frequency. The brain becomes more plastic, more teachable, more responsive to repetition. And what you do in that peak state is what you teach your brain to become. If you give up, you encode failure. If you endure, you encode resilience. If you act with focus, even when exhausted, you strengthen the link between effort and excellence. These are not mental games, these are physical processes. The nervous system rewires under load, under heat, under pressure. There is a reason the world's most elite performers seek discomfort. They know the chemistry of stress is the birthplace of greatness. They don't fear the spike in cortisol, they use it. They don't wait for calm, they bring precision to chaos. Because when your heart is pounding and your hands are shaking, and you still choose discipline, your brain registers that as power. It says this person can hold pressure, this person can act in the storm, this person can lead. Adversity is a tool, not a punishment. When used correctly, it unlocks the highest forms of cognition, deeper focus, greater memory retention, faster learning, stronger emotional regulation. But only when you step into it with intention, only when you face the pressure, feel the intensity, and choose to respond instead of react. That's when you stop being a victim of your biology and become the architect of it. The brain is ready in those moments, ready to learn, to adapt, to shift. And the decision you make under stress becomes the blueprint for who you will be when the next battle arrives. Dopamine is not about pleasure, it's about pursuit. It is the molecule that drives you forward, that energizes effort, that transforms pain into fuel. But its power is often misunderstood, misused, and wasted. When dopamine is tied only to outcomes, to trophies, to applause, to the finish line, it becomes fragile. It rises fast, but crashes harder. But when dopamine is tied to the struggle itself, when it becomes linked to the process of overcoming, to the repetition, to the sweat, to the silence, it becomes unbreakable. Your brain is designed to release dopamine in anticipation of reward, not just in receiving it. That anticipation is the power source of your perseverance. If you learn to attach meaning to the middle, to the moments where you are grinding, doubting, suffering, your dopamine system adapts. The brain begins to crave the work. The effort itself becomes the reward. This isn't psychological trickery. It's biological conditioning. When you say, "This pain means I'm growing," and believe it, your brain hears that. It wires that. It starts to release dopamine not after the mountain is climbed, but during the climb itself. This is how warriors are built. This is how champions outlast the rest. They don't just tolerate discomfort, they find reward in it. Not because they're delusional, but because their neurochemistry has been trained to align with their values. They've taught their brain that meaning lives in the doing, not just the achieving, and the deeper the struggle, the greater the opportunity for growth, and dopamine responds accordingly. Pain, when met with purpose, amplifies dopamine release. That means your suffering doesn't just break you down, it can build you if you frame it right. If you bring focus to the fight, if you choose to see effort as sacred, the brain will flood you with energy. Not from fantasy, but from alignment. Your internal chemistry shifts. You move from desperation to devotion. The process becomes the source of pride, and that pride becomes sustainable power. The problem is not pain. The problem is misaligned expectation. When you expect the process to feel easy, and it doesn't, your brain withholds reward. But when you expect the process to be hard, and you welcome it anyway, your brain releases dopamine for courage. That's the key, dopamine for courage, not just for comfort. The willingness to suffer with intention activates deeper levels of motivation. The path is brutal, but if you attach significance to the brutality, you rewire how you experience effort. The most resilient minds on the planet are not those who were spared hardship. They are those who learned to celebrate it. They transformed pain into signal, signal into action, and action into identity. They trained their dopamine systems to reward discipline, to honor the process, to crave the climb. And in doing so, they rewired their biology not just for winning once, but for winning again and again through storms, through silence, through seasons of invisible labor. Your posture is a command, your breath is a weapon. Long before the brain chooses a thought, the body sends a signal. And when pain hits, when adversity rises. The first battlefield is not the mind, it's the body. The nervous system responds to challenge with tension, constriction, shallow breath, and collapsed posture. These reactions are ancient, they are primal, they are designed for survival, but survival is not your goal. Victory is, and victory requires regulation, not retreat. When you breathe fast and shallow under pressure, the body tells the brain, we're under threat. When your shoulders drop, your spine folds, your eyes sink. You're reinforcing fear through physiology. But when you stand tall, when your breath slows and deepens, when your eyes fix forward, you activate a different pathway. You send a signal back to the brain, we are not prey, we are prepared. This is not metaphor, this is neurobiology. The vagus nerve, the diaphragm, the intercostal muscles, all of them send real, time data to the brain. And the brain responds with hormones, focus, and readiness based on what the body is saying. Controlled breathing is not optional in the storm, it is the anchor. When you inhale slowly through the nose, pause, and exhale longer than you inhale, you stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. You calm the heart, steady the mind, and regain access to your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that makes strategy possible. Without it, you don't lead, you react, but with it, you see clearly, move precisely, and speak powerfully. This is how warriors maintain clarity in chaos, not by chance, but by command of breath, and posture, the forgotten language of identity, shapes your neurochemistry moment to moment. When you hold the body like a victor, you flood the system with signals of readiness. Testosterone rises, cortisol lowers. You send a message to every cell that this pain is not domination, it is data, and you are here to act, not retreat. The spine upright, chest open, chin level, it may seem small, but to the nervous system it is everything. It changes how the brain processes threat, it changes how your voice is heard, it changes how long you stay in the fight. Pain is unavoidable, but panic is optional, and the difference between panic and presence is almost always physical. When the body remains still, strong, and directed under pressure, the brain follows. It stops the spiral. It regains control. It activates circuits of discipline and logic that would otherwise shut down. This is not just for moments of physical strain, but for moments of emotional pain, mental pressure, spiritual silence. In every domain, the body is the first signal, the first tool, the first weapon. You do not need to feel brave to act brave. You need to breathe like a warrior and hold your frame like one. That alone can shift the tide of an internal battle. That alone can turn reaction into response. That alone can bring your biology into alignment with your purpose. Stress is not the enemy. It is the forge, but only if you enter it on your own terms. The brain does not build resilience by avoiding pressure, it builds resilience by rehearsing it. Repeated exposure to voluntary stress rewires the circuits of fear, trains the autonomic nervous system, and transforms your baseline response to chaos. The warriors of the mind are not those who wait for adversity to strike. They are the ones who seek it out, who create it in controlled doses, who walk into the discomfort with full awareness and sharpen their nervous system like a blade. When you deliberately place yourself into physical or psychological strain, whether through cold exposure, endurance training, focused breath holds, or disciplined silence, you activate the same neural pathways that are triggered during real-life adversity. But this time, you're in control, and that control is everything. It tells the brain, we can handle this. It trains the limbic system not to flinch, not to flee, but to observe, to withstand, to stabilize. With each repetition, the circuits associated with panic grow quieter, the circuits of endurance and focus grow stronger. And what once broke you now becomes your baseline. The body begins to respond differently. Your cortisol response flattens. Your heart rate becomes more stable. The amygdala, the fear center, becomes less reactive. Your prefrontal cortex stays online longer. And that matters because when challenge comes uninvited, your system will already know what to do. It's been here before, it's trained for this, it doesn't need to negotiate, it responds, it moves, it leads. Voluntary stress builds the bridge between intention and identity. When you choose to suffer, when no one is watching and there is no applause, you anchor discipline deep into your biology. The brain doesn't forget those moments, it encodes them, it rewires your perception of difficulty, hard becomes familiar. Pressure becomes data, pain becomes a tool. This is not delusion, this is neuroscience. You are reconditioning your response to adversity, one deliberate session at a time. It is not the intensity of the stress that matters most, it is the consistency of exposure. Cold for 2 minutes. Silence for 10, hard training at dawn, the habit of hardship. That is what changes the structure of your mind. You don't become strong by waiting for life to test you. You become strong by testing yourself so often that when life finally strikes, it finds no weakness left. Only presence, only breath, only stillness that cannot be shaken. The ones who conquer don't have less stress. They have a trained relationship with it. Their biology no longer sees it as a threat, but as a signal. And their mind, sharpened by fire and repetition, responds not with panic but with purpose because they've already died to comfort. They've already buried the impulse to run. What remains is discipline in the nervous system, and that discipline moves faster than fear. Winning is not an event, it is a biological process. A loop etched into your nervous system through repetition, struggle, and response. Pain is the first messenger. It signals that something must change, but it is what you do in response to that signal that determines whether the brain rewires for strength or for surrender. The brain doesn't reward you for dreaming, it rewards you for acting under pressure. When you move forward in the presence of resistance, you close the loop. Pain becomes signal, signal becomes adaptation, adaptation becomes power. Each time you face discomfort and choose action, your brain registers it as valuable. Dopamine rises not from victory, but from progress. Neuroplasticity is activated. The architecture of your mind begins to reshape around that moment. You're not just becoming tougher, you're becoming different. Your default response begins to shift. You don't need motivation to act. Action becomes your baseline. What once felt like fear now feels like a green light. The circuits of hesitation begin to decay. The circuits of courage strengthen with each pass through the loop. The biology of winning is built on repetition, not shallow automatic motion, but deep intentional action in the face of pressure. You meet adversity, you breathe into it, you move anyway. The nervous system records this pattern. Cortisol is controlled, the prefrontal cortex stays active, the fear centers are overridden. This is how greatness is coded into flesh, not by rare moments of inspiration, but by 1,000 small battles where the pain rises and you rise higher. Success is not luck, and it's not a mystery. It's a system, pain, response, adaptation, again, again. Again, the more you run that loop with precision, the more automatic it becomes, until the presence of pain no longer triggers retreat, it triggers focus. It activates breath, it calls up stillness, and in that stillness you move with purpose, not emotion. Not panic. Trained, calculated purpose, because the brain has been here before, it knows what to do. You have taught it, you have wired it. This is not about pretending pain doesn't hurt, it's about refusing to waste it. Every setback, every failure, every ounce of fatigue is an opportunity to strengthen the loop, to fire the neurons that build identity, to deepen the grooves of discipline in your biology. Your nervous system doesn't care what you say, it responds to what you repeatedly do. And if what you do in pain is stand firm, breathe deep, move forward, then pain itself becomes your partner in transformation. You will not win once, you will win often because your biology will be trained for it, not just your mindset, your molecules. You will not need to summon strength, it will have already been installed through the loop, through the fire, through the decision to turn pain again and again into power.